Om Tavakatamritam Taptajivanam Kavipiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Shrimadatatam Bhuvinarnantiye Burida Janaha. The nectar of your words, the praise of poet-seers, elixir to parched souls, delight to listening ears. Cleanser of all sins is great and glorious. They who spread it far and wide on earth are most generous. Good evening, friends. Today we will continue studying the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. For those of you who are following, we are on page 105, near the middle of the page. Sri Ramakrishna is still visiting with Vidyasagar, and the conversation is continuing. So Sri Ramakrishna is speaking. He's saying, once Rama asked Hanuman, "How do you look on me?" And Hanuman replied, "O Rama, as long as I have the feeling of I see that thou art the whole and I am a part. Thou art the master and I am thy servant. But when, O Rama, I have the knowledge of truth, then I realize that thou art I and I am thou." This sort of provides us a clue about how we should regard ourselves in relation to God, that we are a part of God. Because we have this idea of separation between ourselves and our chosen ideal, we cannot think of ourselves as being higher than that. We are, in all humility, the smallest part of that great infinite. So Hanuman feels that he's only a part and only the servant of Lord Rama. But when he realizes the truth, then there is no differentiation, because his ego has been lost in the chosen ideal. So he cannot think of himself separate, and there is no himself to think about. All there is Rama. And that is the goal of life. So then Sri Ramakrishna continues, the relationship of master and servant is the proper one. Since this I must remain, let the rascal be God's servant. Well, we all know what our egos are like. Gets us into trouble, makes things uncomfortable for others. We get uncomfortable, we get angry, we cry, we get happy. We go through all the emotional challenges that one has as a human being, all because of the ego. But if we can somehow, instead of thinking of ourselves all the time, shift our focus onto our ideal, Shama Krishna, Holy Mother, Swamiji, Jesus Christ, any of those, and think of ourselves as their servant, then our minds we will not be concentrating so much on what people say about our work. We won't be trying to look for praise or blame, but instead it will be an offering to them, and we seek only their happiness and we only seek to serve them, irrespective of what happens to us in the world as a result of our actions. But we do it for them, because we believe it is right, but it should also be what our master would want us to do. So we will not do something that will inflict pain on others. We will not make things uncomfortable if we don't have to. But yet we still, for those that are within our scope of responsibility, we still have to act responsible. We can't just let our children run amok and do whatever they want. So, or if you're the boss of a company, you can't just let the employees do whatever they want, and that you have responsibilities to your bosses. So still, you have responsibility. But within the scope of that responsibility, you might have to discipline. You might cause someone to be pained because you may have to fire them or say something they may not like. But you can't just go out on the street and just because someone looks different than you or dresses differently that you will now be prejudiced and attack them or say something nasty. Well, that's not serving God, because everyone is God's child. Everyone works within their ability and expresses themselves as they choose. So yes, you give a certain amount of freedom, but we serve them just by acknowledging, okay, say good morning, shake their hand or whatever, acknowledge that they are there. And if you want to engage in conversation, if you want to make them feel at ease, that's all part of serving. But others you might have to serve with more discipline. But that's still serving God. God is in all the beings. He has put you in a certain place, in a certain position to act responsibly. And it's also the employees, they have to come up to the mark of what the ideals are of the company they've chosen to work for. So there are all these different ideals that at different levels people are striving for. Those that you might have to be responsible for may have no interest in religion or anything, but that doesn't mean you have to impose your thoughts on them. This is just between you and God, that you will try to serve God as selflessly as possible. So this relationship of master and servant, well, sometimes you have to teach somebody how to be a servant, even though you might be their boss. But they, in turn, once they learn to respect someone of a higher up than they themselves can, in turn, understand at some point in their life how they should serve God if they ever generate that interest. But everybody wants to teach or wants to rule, but nobody wants to be a student or a servant. They don't want to learn that part. But still, by us being good servants, we also inspire others to serve properly or correctly. And then if they inquire, well, how do you manage to do this? How do you manage to do that? Well, then you can give yours, explain a little more deeply. Well, I don't do it to please the big boss. I do this to please God. And then let God decide, come what may, what the results of my actions will be. So Swami Nikhilananda continues, I and mine, these constitute ignorance. My house, my wealth, my learning, my possessions. The attitude that prompts one to say such things comes of ignorance. On the contrary, the attitude born of knowledge is, O God, Thou art the Master, and all these things belong to Thee, house, family, children, attendants, friends are Thine. Now, although he says this is the attitude born of knowledge, in our present state, we are practicing still. we have not realized this because it just takes a moment of distraction. You have forgotten already that this is God's and not yours, just because that ego will start creeping up again. So for us, from our standpoint, this is constant practice. But this constant practice is actually the truth. It is one of the higher truths. And by our constant practice, we will realize that higher truth. From our practice, we only know it from that this is God's, that is God's, only because that's within the scope of our perception. But when we actually realize it on the bigger scale, we will see it as, on a much broader sense, that we will feel that, no, she's not just my child. Every person that is in the world is my child. And you will feel that, no, everyone is my child. Or, it's just like Holy Mother felt that she was the mother of all, not just the children that would come to, or just not the disciples would come to Sri Ramakrishna. She felt everyone was her child. So that is the higher realization of someone following this practice. Sometimes, as swamis, we're invited to people's homes, and of course, the husband might pick us up, drive us to the home, and then kind of say, well, this is my house, and this is my swimming pool, this is my car, and this and that. And then we look at them, the wife comes, and then we think, don't you mean this is our house, our car? So that is just a beginning step of getting outside of your own ego, that you think, well, just because you are the financial support of the family, that you start thinking this is my house, my car, my property. But really, it's not just your house, it's yours and your wife's, the children's. This is our house, this is our car. That's how you start on the small scale. This is our neighborhood, this is our city, this is our country, this is our world. And then it's no longer just by the family circle, it's the community, it's the city, it's all the people, it's the nation. So we expand outward like that. So, and then we lose ourselves then in basically what they call the universal self. Now Sri Ramakrishna continues and he says, one should constantly remember death. Nothing will survive death. We are born into this world to perform certain duties, like the people who come from the countryside to Calcutta on business. If a visitor goes to a rich man's garden, the superintendent says to him, this is our garden, this is our lake, and so forth. But if the superintendent is dismissed for some misdeed, he can't carry away even his mango wood chest. He sends it secretly by the gatekeeper, and there's laughter. Now, mango wood is not a very strong wood. It's probably one of the cheapest woods you can find. And whatever you could slap together, whatever it is, it'll be probably quite temporary, because otherwise it may end up rotting. But it's just like us, when we get some scrap wood, build something, and we think it's ours. And we because we use it all the time, we think that we have the right to take it away and all this, but really it's just a piece of junk. But it has served its purpose temporarily. So apparently even if you've gotten attached to your little mango wood chest, you wouldn't dare ask the master of the house if you could take it with you, but you might ask someone else, the next gatekeeper, if you could take it. Now, God laughs on two occasions. He laughs when the physician says to the patient's mother, "Don't be afraid, mother. I shall certainly cure your boy." God laughs, saying to himself, "I am going to take his life, and this man says he will save it." The physician thinks he is the master, forgetting that God is the master. God laughs again when two brothers divide their land with a string, saying to each other, "This side is mine and that side is yours." He laughs and says to himself, "The whole universe belongs to me, but they say they own this portion or that portion." So we come into this world, we say, "Hey, this is my mother, this is my father, it's my brothers, my sisters, my toys, everything is my. And this just progresses as we get older. And these are my friends, this is my car, this is my house, my wife, my this and that. So we are constantly thinking like this. But if you try to think of it rationally, nothing ever was yours. You're the one claiming ownership to this. And then if another person claims ownership to the same property or the same person and the same this, then confrontation. But yet both are quite ignorant of the fact that in reality, we didn't come into this world owning anything. And why are we making claims that this is mine and this is yours? Why are we even identifying? We're separating things and say, well, one for you, one for me, two for you, three for me. We're playing this game all the time. And it's like, well, who gave us the right to do that? There's no one that gave us any authority that said that this is yours. Even if I pour out $10,000 to buy a car, yes, you fill out the paperwork and it says this car belongs to so-and-so, and this is, if I had to take out a loan, I am responsible for paying the bills and all this. But in reality, no one gave you this, nobody gave you any authority to say this car is yours. Even the very money that you own, nobody said that this is your money. By being in society, just to make society work, suddenly, well, we need a creditor. We need someone to be responsible. So somebody has to be held accountable. So now all of a sudden you become the owner of something and responsible for it. If nobody claimed ownership of anything, this world would run amok also, because nobody will take care of anything. So again, from society's point of view, in order to make a society run, yes, we are required to claim ownership. But from the greater standpoint, we came into this world with nothing. When we leave this world, we can't take anything with us. And so those are the two, that's the end of the spectrum. But in between there, we came without owning anything, and we leave, we can't take anything with us. Those things that we treasure the most, we can't take. So then that says, well, what does that say about all the claims we have made all our lives? Those have been false claims, because from the grand standpoint, they were never ours. But so much frustration, so much holding on to these things, we have psyched ourselves into believing that they are ours. I remember once, I was just a kid, I was taking a nap, maybe 5 years old, and I remember because the dream was so vivid, I was playing in a dream with my red toy truck, fire truck. I was just going all over the place with it, but then I had this sense already that I'm about to wake up. So I grabbed that truck, I held it against my chest, and I said, I want this truck to be, I wanted this truck to be there when I wake up. And when I woke up, And my eyes were closed. I could feel the wheels and the metal parts of the truck against my chest. I brought the truck into this world. And when I opened my eyes, I realized there's nothing there. That truck was never there, but yet whatever pain I felt from holding that object so tight to me, that wasn't the truck. That was just my desire to have that object that cherished object with me. And we are like that throughout. And when we die, we can't take those cherished objects. You're going to hold it against your chest, and whatever happens after you die, that's not going to be there. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says, it's better to remember God when you die, because that is the truth, the higher truth. That is what you're going to see, something about God, or something about, if you realize the truth, that's what you will experience. And you won't be longing for the things you've had to leave behind. So, and that's why it's important not to be attached to these worldly objects. Am I still attached to that red toy truck? No, but I remember the dream. And if I really think about it, I can even imagine the feelings I had in the dream. But it's a distant memory. I don't care to play with a red toy truck now. I'd rather go and step into a real one. Put me in the cab and show me what to do with the controls. So Sri Ramakrishna continues, can we know God through reasoning? Well, Sri Ramakrishna doesn't even answer that question directly. He just says, be his servant, surrender yourself to him, and then pray to him. That's interesting. Rather than trying to, because people are always asking, well, because they read about the different yogas, jnana yoga, realizing God by using reasoning. And so the question is, can you know God through reasoning? Well, he's talking to basically not just Vidyasagar, but also many of his followers and admirers, plus some of the disciples are all in this room. And right now he's speaking more towards to Vidyasagar. And Vidyasagar, as I had mentioned before, is a great scholar, well educated. Everything he has studied has been done through reasoning, developing the mind. But now Sri Ramakrishna is trying to have him go beyond that, because Sri Ramakrishna understands that, well, all that knowledge and study, even the study of the scriptures, that's not going to help you realize God. So he just says outright, be his servant, surrender yourself to him, and then pray to him. Now, if one's prayer is sincere, then God will reveal to you what his real nature is, what the truth is. And Sri Ramakrishna always has said that following that path, the truth that you will experience then is the same truth that one who is capable of following the path of reasoning will realize. So then he says to Vidyasagar with a smile, well, what is your attitude? Vidyasagar says, well, someday I shall confide it to you. And all laugh. So I'm not quite sure what he meant by that. Perhaps he was embarrassed to speak his mind in front of everyone. But Sri Ramakrishna laughingly says, God cannot be realized through mere scholarly reasoning. And then, intoxicated with divine love, the master starts to sing. Now, one thing I've noticed as you read the Gospel, Sri Ramakrishna, whenever he feels in the mood, will start to sing a song. And I start to wonder, well, Hindi movies are just like that. And I'm wondering, this is even before Hindi movies. And I wonder, how, this must be something that's very cultural, that when one is in the mood, they will start to sing. It doesn't matter who's around you. And so this is quite interesting. How did the Hindi movies learn this from reading the Gospel or some other works? Because many playwrights, many of the plays that were done in those days also, public performances, there'll be acting and then there'll be a song. Either a song to Lord Krishna or to Divine Mother. So it tells me that that is built into the culture. That was the way they entertained. And that method has continued into the Hindi movies. And that's why you won't find a Hindi movie that's less than 2 hours long. Because it's going to be song, dance, and some dialogue. Exactly what you see in the Gospel, because Sri Ramakrishna at various times will get up and dance to the music. So I will read the song. It's actually a poem, but this is also one of the songs that we sing here sometimes, that we have put to music. I can't sing it by myself at this moment, but I'll just read the song. Who is there that can understand what Mother Kali is? Even the 6 darshanas are powerless to reveal her. Darshanas are the 6 major philosophies and the scriptures. It is she, the scriptures say, that is the inner self of the yogi, who in the self discovers all his joy. She that of her own sweet will inhabits every living thing. The macrocosm and microcosm rest in the mother's womb. Now do you see how vast it is? In the Muladhara, the yogi meditates on her, and in the Sahasrara, who but Shiva has beheld her as she really is? Within the lotus wilderness, she sports beside her mate, the swan. When a man aspires to understand her, Ram Prasad must smile. To think of knowing her, he says, is quite as laughable as to imagine one can swim across the boundless sea. But while my mind has understood, alas, my heart has not. Though but a dwarf, it still would strive to make a captive of the moon. Many poets put their name in the poem, in this case Ram Prasad, as a way of showing that they are a devotee, that they are, I would say, a form of prayer. So they eject themselves into the poem. Continuing, the Master said, did you notice the macrocosm and microcosm rest in the mother's womb? Now do you see how vast it is? Again, the poet says, even the 6 darshanas are powerless to reveal her. And then Sri Ramakrishna then reaffirms, she cannot be realized by means of mere scholarship. One must have faith and love. So here he is trying to educate Vidyasagar. Vidyasagar, who himself is already so educated, but Sri Ramakrishna felt that he did not quite know this, that also faith and love, turning one's emotions toward God, can be a very powerful tool. In fact, this is what faith is all about. With the power of faith, so much can be accomplished. So, one must have faith and love. Well, faith in what? Faith in my ability to do things? Then all of a sudden the ego pops up again. Then your self-confidence. All these things that you were trying to say, well, then I'm not the servant, and I'm not serving my master. So faith in what? Well, faith in God. Faith that by you following the religious path or spiritual path, that God will provide and God will decide what you need, what you don't need. Do you need the house? Do you need this car? Do you need this? Do you need that? Do you need name? Do you need fame? Do you need all these things? Well, most don't. They are needed to make this world run, but for the spiritual aspirant, they are not needed. Not needed for us at our level. What kind of faith and love a Swami Vivekananda has, I'm not really capable of understanding. I can imagine it, but I am far from that, as many of us are. So our faith and love is still in the very developmental stage. And that grows as our relationship with God develops. Sri Ramakrishna has mentioned before that we should develop a relationship with God. Well, master-servant is one relationship, but we can also look on God as our mother or our father. We can also look on God as our child. And when we look on God as our mother or our father, then we should be thinking of ourselves as their children, as their son or their daughter. When we look on God as a child, then we look on ourselves as the protector of that child, as that child's mother or that child's father. One of the disciplines that is to look on God as baby Krishna. So you will then be thinking that you are protecting this baby, this child. This child might be your own child, it might be another child, but still you will feel that you are the protector. You will not be aware of all the powers behind that, what that child is capable of, but you're thinking of it as your child. So you are losing your ego and just trying to serve that child. When you are the child and you think of God as the mother, then you are not thinking yourself as superior to your mother or your father. That might be what teenagers are doing, have done for ages, but because at some point they think they know everything. But really, they are just experiencing their ego, because they are now, as they have lost the ego of a child and are now becoming aware that, their ego is growing. They are aware that they are actually able to basically command their parents, or they know that their words have a certain strength or power, so now they feel they are testing it. But really, they are still basically they're exercising their ego. But once they've actually got into a job and have responsibility, then all of a sudden, it's okay, now I can afford to do this, to do that, I want this, I want that. So now it just starts to grow in leaps and bounds. But still, if that can be directed toward God, where you think that you are now you are serving God, then that ego gets restrained. And you'll say, well, I'm buying this car now, not for myself, but so that I can volunteer to drive elderly people around or something like that. Have a higher purpose. This car is now for God's work. Okay, well, maybe I have to go to work, support a family, so I can donate money to so-and-so charities, and in this way I'm serving God, so I need a vehicle. But don't think that this vehicle is yours, you can brag about it. Oh, it's 600 horsepower, it can get me from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. Yeah, those are great numbers to fantasize over, but still, what's the real, have some real purpose behind it, some selfless purpose. The car should be your servant. You are God's servant, but this machine should be your servant and not your master. You don't want your possessions to become your master. They should be your servant. They're your tools so that you can serve. So I will conclude with that thought today. So I will conclude with a chant. Niranjanam nityam anantarupam bhaktanukampa tritavigraham vai Ishavataram paramesamityam tvam Ramakrishnam shirasa namamaha. We salute that Ramakrishna, who is without blemish, eternal and infinite in forms, who has assumed human form out of compassion for the devotees, who is God incarnate, the Supreme Lord, and who is most worshipful. So thank you. If there are any questions in the audience or online, I will give you a moment to think about that while I give the announcements. This coming Friday, we usually have a class on the householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. And we will be having Swami Nikhilananda, who has returned from India. He feels he has the strength and energy to give the class. I will not deny him that opportunity. So he will be speaking on the disciple Ramchandra Datta. And this this Sunday, Swami Ramatmananda, who is at our retreat property, will continue with the Sunday talk he started a few weeks back, Why We Suffer, Part 2. I see no questions anywhere. Good for me. So thank you all very much for attending, and we'll see you next time.